Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm your host, Emer Zone, and together here we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little. In the best possible way, of course, because life's too damn precious and too short to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It is time to choose ourselves for life so damn fabulous and soulfully fulfilling that we have to keep pinching ourselves to check if we're dreaming. Let's do this. Today I'm speaking with the wonderful Lyn Weinman, who's a passionate leader who has dedicated her career to helping change makers do more good in the world. And she does that by putting the megaphone in front of those leading positive change and empowering others to leave their mark. She's been in the marketing domain for over 30 years. She is a founder, president, and chief strategist of KidGlove, a certified B Corp advertising agency. Let's jump in for a wonderful conversation with Lynn. Hi, Lynn. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this as well. This is a fun topic and a fun podcast, and I can't wait to have a fun conversation.
Well, I'm going to start it off by asking you what I hope is a fun question, just to get your imagination going and jump in. So somebody asked me this question a long time ago, and I loved it, and it really got me thinking. So if you were at a function or a party or an event one evening, and there's that point where I've had a great time, but I'm a bit tired and I'm heading for home, and then you hear some topic of conversation, and it's just something that makes you say, oh, I want to linger a while.
Ooh.
Because they're talking about that.
Yeah.
What might that topic be for you, Lynn?
Okay, I'm going to say I love this question because this is a frequent argument in my household. When we're at a party and I'm ready to go, I say goodbye and walk out the door. My husband says goodbye and then goes around and talks to everybody one more time. Well, I'm standing at the door. So it's funny that you say that because it's not very often that once I decide to go, I get pulled back in. But anything related to making a difference, right? Like that is just my hot button right now. And it's where I feel like pulled and energized because I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I've done a lot of things and I'm really just starting to think about, what is my purpose here? And how can I make a difference? How can I uplift other people to make a difference? And where are the topics where we can have that change? That's what would pull me in a big way.
That's exciting. That's exciting. And obviously in the work that KidGlove is doing, it is all about that theme and that topic and kind of, as you put it, putting the megaphone in front of, well, I'm paraphrasing, but in the change makers or people who really want to make a difference in the world. And it's been, how long has KidGlove, is it 10 years since you founded?
If you will believe it, it's been 15 years, 15 years for KidGlove.
Congratulations.
No, it's fine because our 10th anniversary was right after the start of the pandemic. And oddly, that's what got me into podcasting because, I was really looking forward to, as a business owner, having the big party and maybe having the Chamber of Commerce come. And in our town, the mayor sometimes will write you a proclamation and call it KidGlove Day. And our 10th anniversary was in May of 2020. So we were all like still at home, wiping down our groceries and, doing all the crazy things. So my team and I were just like, well, we have to celebrate. What will we do? And we did two things. We did what we called the Agency for Change Challenge. And we took the money that we were going to spend on our party and we said, let's just let purpose-driven organizations and nonprofits apply for $10,000 worth of work. Like we'll just gift them this work. And there were only two questions on the application. And it was, what are you doing to make a difference in the world? And how would you use this work? And we had nearly 50 organizations in the Midwest, but a few from across the country that applied. And we're such softies here. We couldn't just pick one, we picked two.
Love it.
But then I had to turn around and tell 48 companies or organizations that they didn't win, which breaks my heart. So we started a podcast and we said, hey, you didn't win, but we're starting a podcast and you can be on our podcast. And that's how we kind of got our first, I don't know, maybe dozen podcast participants for the Agency for Change podcast. So the contest was called the Agency for Change, and then we just continued that into the podcast.
Naturally a theme. That's beautiful. And I think the world is just hungry for the work that you do. I was out in a store the other day and I was doing some holiday shopping and I was looking at just winter coats for we live Ski Basin, right? And you know the brand I'm going to talk about. And my husband was picking up some brand and I said, no. This brand, these guys are just all about the environment and giving back and their work culture. And, there's a certain amount of price sensitivity sometimes, but I said, people identify with companies who are doing good things because they say, that I need to stand for something. And when I spend money in any way, or where I show up, I give my time, I give my resources in any direction, it's like an extension of my own values.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much research right now that really indicates that consumers want to align with brands that are making a difference in the world. Individuals want to work for companies that are making a difference in the world. So, being able to articulate your purpose, but also articulating it in a real and authentic way can be very powerful. And, just to follow your story on the winter coat, I have a friend who started a beautiful handbag company, and it's a purpose-driven handbag company. It's called Sapan, and they just do a lot of things right, and they make beautiful handbags. But their founder, Brooke Mullen, she likes to say that at the end of the year, many of us donate to causes to alleviate problems or make the world a better place. But for the 10 or 11 months prior to that, we have the tendency to make purchases from companies that cause those problems, right? And if we could just be, I know, right? Like when she said that, I thought,
truth bomb.
Oh, wow, right? But it really does make you think about every purchase you make is a vote for a certain way of doing business or of conduct. And that, ever since I heard her say that, and it was a few months ago, I've been a lot more thoughtful about where I put those dollars.
That's, such a truth bomb from Brooke.
Yes.
Thank
Brooke
you,
is amazing. Yes.
Brooke, I'll be looking at your handbag store and there's still time for holiday shopping. I think when we think about like who we want to be in the world, how we want to bring intention to how we're living our lives. And I think like you and I, Lynn, we're like 50-plussers, right?
Oh, yes.
We're in that stage.
We're close to 60. I'm a close to 60-year. You're younger than me.
I'm halfway there, Lynn.
Okay,
I'm halfway there.
All right.
So I don't think it needs to, it's a certain time of life sort of realization. I think that finding our own purpose and being an expression of our values is something that I think we all feel so much better when we're leaning into that in small ways and in big ways. Like in small ways, so small, but how we're spending our money, how we're showing up as consumers, that we're thinking about the environment, we're thinking about a small business, maybe we're thinking woman-owned business, we're thinking protecting traditional crafts, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then from a personal point of view, then how can I make a difference in the world through, who I'm being? And you've kind of really, I think, put that on, rocket fuel into that lane.
Yeah.
Because you were in corporate world doing branding and
Yeah.
marketing and very successful. Thank you very much. What happened? What
Yeah.
shift happened for you, whether it was small or big, or you just began to notice like, this isn't quite doing it for me anymore, that
Right.
leads you to a big purpose shift in your
Yeah.
trajectory?
I think my experience kind of goes along with the saying of it happened slowly and then it happened fast, right? And so I worked for over 20 years for a large advertising agency, handling large corporate accounts. I traveled a lot. I mean, I moved up the ranks. Like on paper, it looked fantastic, right? But I
Mm.
also was raising a family. I had 3 kids. My husband put his career on hold to really support me. I spent a lot of time away from the kids. I would pick them up from school, take them home, feed them dinner, give them baths, put them to bed, and then I would go back to work for several hours. And this was before we worked virtually, so I literally drove back to an office and worked for
Oh,
several
wow.
hours, right? And it just kind of, and I thought I was living the dream. Like I convinced myself I was living the dream. I convinced myself that I was going places. And then just one day I woke up and I just said to myself, I can't do this anymore.
Mm.
And I felt an extreme amount of guilt because my husband had put, his career on hold. My kids had sacrificed because I was away. And now I didn't know if I wanted to do this anymore. And so there was a part of my like Midwestern roots that was like, well, just get over it, right? Like just figure it out. But I couldn't figure it out. Like something was pulling at me and saying, this isn't right. And it really, when I dug into it, it really wasn't about the long hours. It wasn't about like difficult situations. It was about the fact that I was giving so much energy and so much passion to products I didn't really care about, right? I mean, they weren't bad products. They weren't doing anything bad to the environment. They weren't bad companies, but I just didn't care. And it's hard to be great at your job when you just don't care, right? Like, I remember one day, I mean, I was working on a client that sold very expensive equipment for golf courses. And we are talking about like engines and turn radius and pressure. And I just was like, I just don't care anymore. And I didn't really know right away what to do about that. And I was so lucky. And I hope this woman hears this podcast because somebody introduced me to a woman who was a life coach. It's the first time I'd ever heard of a life coach. It would have been 16 or 17 years ago. And I was like, I'll try anything because I don't know what to do here. And I sat down with Georgia Glass, was her name, Georgia Glass, the life coach. And in 15 minutes over coffee, she asked me 3 questions. I'm not even sure what the 3 questions were. But after she asked me those questions, everything was so clear to me, right? Like I just knew that I love this business of advertising and marketing and branding. I just needed to do it for clients or causes that mattered to me. And I needed to do it in a culture that really felt like it, respected and uplifted people. And if you know anything about the advertising agency, that is typically not what it's known for. It's known for long hours and cutthroat competition. And, we still have some of that. But when I figured this out, I just was ready to like shoot out of that coffee shop and go do it. But I still kind of had this issue where I had a salary and I needed a salary, right? And wasn't in a position to completely change the place I was in. I was one of 150 people. And so I was recruited away to go work for another agency to be their president. And I thought, oh, this is the answer for me. But I very quickly figured out that it wasn't the answer for me, right? Like I learned that you can be the president of an organization, but if you don't see eye to eye with the owner, it's a pretty lonely place to be to advocate for somebody else's ideas. So my wonderful husband, who has a difficult time leaving parties because he likes to talk to everybody one more time. My wonderful husband, said to me, "You've always wanted to start your own agency. Maybe this is the time." And so me and my computer at my dining room table, once again, before it was cool to work remotely or do co-working, I just started. And I was lucky to have some clients come to me right away. And I was lucky to know quite a few, very talented advertising freelancers that came along with me for the ride. And KidGlove just grew out of that.
Oh, it's just the stuff of Hollywood movies, Lynn.
I don't know about that,
but
I'm glad there wasn't a movie because I was not sleeping much during that time, and I was kind of a wreck, but I was like 20 hours a day on my little computer, like doing my thing, and I was so energized, right? Like even though I was working longer hours, making less money, I was energized by the idea of creating something that I could really believe in.
And it's that sense of alignment, isn't it?
Yeah.
That, this matters at a really, really deep level.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the marketing industry, I studied marketing in college. That was what I studied, international marketing and languages, but never really worked in that domain. But now when we look around, we're constantly bombarded with so much messaging, and it is like the attention economy that to get people's attention is so much more difficult. And it's just so many practices, so many behavioral scientists involved to kind of like hook them and then just control the attention. So when you're looking to get attention and eyeballs on companies, products, individuals who are doing real change, I mean, you have to have it. It isn't just like a big heart, I want to change the world. You have to have the marketing chops to be able to get into this place and kind of get the input, put that spotlight on people, and get that megaphone. And so, I mean, how difficult is that compared to, say, how it was even 10 years ago?
Yeah. I think you can look at it. I'm going to look at it both ways because yes, we are just bombarded all the time with messages. I mean, I don't know if you've seen these new Meta glasses, but I met a woman who has like these glasses that read her text messages, and pretty soon people are going to be advertising to you through your glasses, right? So yes, there's I know, right? I know. So yes, there's a lot of competition, but I think also there's a lot of tools, right? And I think that, there was a time when if you wanted to be recognized, you had to have a big television budget and you had to have a big newspaper budget and a big print budget. And now there's so many wonderful tools that small companies can really be very smart with digital tools to reach their target audience. So, part of the strategy does have to do with the connection, like how are we going to get this in front of people? But then a bigger part of the strategy that I like to focus on is what are we going to say and how are we going to say it in a way that it really sticks, right? And not everyone in the world will care about a purpose-driven organization or a nonprofit. And I don't need everyone in the world for my, clients, but I need to find the people that it will resonate, their message will resonate with most. And then how do we tell the story so they remember? And so the great thing about KidGlove and being an agency that specializes in purpose-driven marketing is this is essentially all that we do. And so our team is so well trained on the nuances of this kind of work that it's what we think about all the time. And every once in a while, if I maybe doubt a little bit about, hey, is what we're doing really that special? We'll have a client come into us that's been working with another agency, and we'll see what they've done, and we'll go, oh, no, we can't do it that way, right? Like you can't, if you're a nonprofit looking for donations, you can't insult your donors, or you can't be so out there that it looks like you're spending all the donors' money on your advertising, or there is a balance to purpose advertising. Like you have to promote the product first, but the purpose is part of that messaging. And you have to do it with authenticity or integrity, because we all live in glass houses right now with social media and digital marketing that, if you're espousing to be behind a certain cause or to do certain things and you don't actually live that as a business or even as an individual, people will know. And that can be worse than not saying anything at all.
Yeah, I was watching a documentary just recently, and they were talking about environmental causes and some very big names, and they're just kind of, I hadn't heard the term before, greenwashing.
Greenwashing, yes.
And I
Yes.
was like, oh, wow. So quite the eye opener for me. But what really came across, and what comes across when speaking to people across generations, is a deep thirst for meaning
Yeah.
and authenticity, and to feel that there are some truth tellers there. There are people who are
Right.
passionate about things that matter and are prepared to stand up, take that space, and
Yeah.
say, this is what it's about. And I think that resonates very deeply with people, that they're really thirsty for it. So when you can make that connection between product and, the person and the purpose that
Yes.
sits behind it, it's a magical combination.
Absolutely. It is magical. I mean, for me too, one of my favorite things is when we work with organizations and help them find that right brand or that right message. Like, and then they're just like catapulted forward, turbo boosted forward because they finally have it. They finally know how to speak about themselves in a way that really resonates. And they finally have that look and feel that, I always say when we work with a brand, I don't ever want any of our clients to have to say, we have a quality product or a quality service, or you should trust us. I want you to just feel that from the thoughtfulness, right? From the thoughtfulness. And you do feel it. I was talking to a nonprofit last week, and we're just starting to redo their website. And their current website is just outdated. And I said, you as an organization are so smart and you're so detail oriented and you care for people deeply. But when I go to your website and I see that it's outdated and the graphics are outdated and there are things on there that are broken, that tells me, if that's the only thing I see about you, it tells me a very different story about you as an organization, right? So all of those little cues come together and they make a difference.
And as you're explaining that, and it makes so much sense, I'm just reminded of, the late great Maya Angelou. They'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And
Right?
it's kind of what you're speaking to, this feeling, and there's so much that we are taking in subconsciously and that we're processing
Yes.
and that we're making judgments on that we don't realize we're doing it.
Right. Well, and I think too, that's where in kind of this new era of all of this digital marketing and social media and websites and, all of the different forms of it, when you think about how you make someone feel, I think we all instantly kind of think about our in-person and face-to-face interactions. But now you've got a website or a digital ad or a social media post that is interacting on your behalf. And that interaction needs to have, in as much as it can, the same qualities as you would want. I tell people all the time, and this might sound silly, but a person going to your website should feel as welcomed and as taken care of as they would if they walked through the front door of your building. And if that's not happening, because right now more people are probably walking through the homepage of your website than the front door of your building. If that's not happening, then you have some work to do.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, when you are in a physical space and you get a real kind of feel for it, don't you? And you don't, like, some people are master interior decorators and they
Yes.
create an environment I could not do that. I have to
Right.
hire that. And
Right.
and sometimes we know what we don't know. A lot of the time we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And I think probably you're dealing with a lot of people, they've got the thing right. The purpose is amazing. The product or the service is just really
Yes.
important. And it's a big problem if you underestimate the importance of the message to market part, the marketing
Right.
part of it. And there's so many different parts to the marketing. I want to talk to you as well about culture, because
Oh,
I know
yeah.
how incredible, when we're talking about how you make somebody feel, we spoke a little bit about the beginning of the pandemic, and that's why I thought it was 10 years of KidGlove, because when the pandemic happened,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
just like time.
I know. I know.
But when I think about the pandemic, and then there was such a change in how
Yeah.
people worked, and people were really then struggling for connection, working remotely, and then there was, help me out if you remember it, what was when everyone started leaving their jobs, the big something,
Oh, quiet. Was it quiet? It wasn't
quiet,
quiet
it was
quitting, but
quiet
it was
quitting, and
something like that.
there was
Yeah.
something slightly louder
Yes.
before
But
that, but
everybody was leaving. It's like, it's not worth it. I'm just going to quit my job and keep my kids at home and, yeah, and have a vegetable garden in the backyard and bake bread, I
yeah,
think.
everyone was
Yeah.
baking bread. But there's it probably was just like this pressure cooker environment that
Yes.
exposed so much of what had been going wrong in kind of corporate offices around the
Yes.
world, that you can't just have Pizza Friday or bring some fresh fruit in now and then or give a discount or on a membership
Right.
gym and think that you're taking care of people. What
Right.
why why has culture been such an incredibly important part of KidGlove for you?
Yeah. Well, it really is. And it shouldn't be, but it really is a differentiating factor for us. So, when we chose the brand Kid Glove, it's all based on that saying, to be treated with kid gloves. And we like to say that we treat brands and people with great care. And when we think about the people, we start internally with our own team, because it's our own team that's going to interact with our clients. And so we've always really worked on culture, but I would say since the pandemic, we have really doubled down, because we have embraced a remote and hybrid workplace. And so we have people that live out of state and they can't come into the office. So when we decided we were going to have full-time employees that can't come into the office, we committed to building a great culture remotely. And so, we have a lot of different things that we do as a team. And I was just on a panel last week with a bunch of advertising agencies, and they were all saying, oh, we're bringing our people back. We need to be in person. The only way you can build culture is in person. And I was the only one that put up my hands and said, you know what? I'm going to disagree with you all. Like, I think that taking care of people can be done remotely. So we have a few things that we do. And one of the terms I like to use that often floors people when you think about our industry, but it is creating an environment of psychological safety. And this has come from like a lot of reading, a lot of learning. But one of my favorite books on culture is Simon Sinek, and it's not his most popular book, but it's Leaders Eat Last.
Mm-hmm.
And that book is all about servant leadership, and it's all about creating a culture where there's a balance of psychological safety, but also of, striving and improving and growing. So you've kind of got the blend of both. But the more our team can get into a mindset where they're not afraid or shamed or, have guilt over certain things, the more we can take that away, the more they can just free up their health and their minds to really focus on the work for our clients, right? So I just feel like we as humans give so much of our energy and attention to the drama that if we can just get rid of the drama, life and work can be so much better. And so we are not perfect at it by any means, but we're pretty good at it, and we work really hard. And then the other thing that we do is we use a system called Working Genius that comes from Patrick Lencioni. And I love it because it's similar to some of these other systems like Predictive Index or Strengths Finder. But the Working Genius is so simple that every single person on our team can understand it, can embrace it, can remember it, can pull it into our vernacular. So the whole premise is there's 6 personality strengths that you need to complete a project. And everybody at advertising agencies usually works on teams. And of those 6, 2 of them are going to be your working genius, things that you are good at. And when you do those things, they light you up. 2 are going to be your competency. You're good at it, but if you had to do it all the time, you wouldn't love it. 2 of them are your frustrations. And so we really work on, if we can keep you in your working genius and out of your frustrations, your happiness at work, your quality of work, your productivity is all going to be so much better. So we very intentionally combine teams of people. So we have all 6 working geniuses, or we even tell people, hey, if you've got something on your plate today that's going to take you all day and it's in your frustration, raise your hand and find someone else on the team that loves to do that thing, that will do it better, more happily, more quickly. And you guys trade for the day. And it's amazing what a difference that makes. And now we've even started, as we onboard new clients, we do a working genius facilitation with our clients who we'll be working with mostly and their team, so that we can all understand each other's work styles, right? And it even helps us understand, somebody who's more on the side of invention or wonder. They might want us to present things in the very early rough stages because they want to be involved. And those that are more on the kind of discernment and tenacity end, they may not want to see it until it's all buttoned up. And now we've got some framework for having that conversation.
Oh, that's so clever. That's so clever.
It's really a good system. I wish I had invented it, but since I didn't invent it, the next best thing I can do is use it.
And I just kind of dialing back a little bit to you being in that meeting where on that panel where people were talking about getting people back to the office. This is like one of my little pet peeves.
Mine too.
I just feel like the whole pandemic thing was like, oh, when everybody was forced into their house, the thing that women have been talking about forever, which is, we can work productively at home. We don't have to
Yes.
physically lose all this time to commute into an office.
Yes.
It took a global pandemic to convince men for a certain period of time, at least, that it worked. Because,
Absolutely.
and
Well,
and
and
now, go ahead.
yeah, I wouldn't, before the pandemic, there's no way you would have convinced me of that. I would have said advertising is a team sport. We all need to be in the same room at the same table together working on these things. But honestly, we can get on a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting and use electronic tools and collaborate, I would say, even in a more productive way than, being on a whiteboard or some of the other things. And I think too, our COO at KidGlove, Catherine Warren, is always like looking into the latest research and data. And what we're seeing is that a hybrid work style actually can be very disruptive because you don't have your home base. Like if I work at home on Monday and then in the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then on home on Friday, I may not be able to kind of get into that rhythm or have that place. So, what we've learned is to really trust our team and let them work where they need to work. And, we all have days where, hey, you really need to be in the office for this in-person meeting or this photo shoot or something. But for the most part, we don't try to dictate where people work from. You need to be available during our work hours, right? And things like that. But we even allow as much flexibility as we can in that. We have a lot of working moms, and right now we're in the holiday season. If you need to go watch your kids in their holiday program in the middle of the day, go do that, and then just finish the work when it makes sense for you. So, yeah.
I think I love that. It sounds like a real sort of agile culture as well. It's flexible. And I think rigidity rarely serves us.
Yeah. In
In
particular, in a creative space, rigidity and creativity don't usually go together.
Yeah, I used to work in law and you need quite a bit of rigidity there. And I get it. You
Yeah.
need people in the same space there when you're training juniors up. They
Yes.
need to be around a partner and they need to be, physically,
Yes.
it really is dependent on the industry that you are in. But
Very much.
I, I think what you said about psychological safety is so important too. We have to feel the amount of, oh my gosh, energy that is spent on just trying to navigate what is other people's emotional states that they're not aware of, that they're projecting out into
Yes.
an environment that then makes people feel unwelcome or that they can't speak. All of it. Anybody
Yes.
listening to this who's
Right?
ever worked in an office is aware of whether they're steeling themselves to be in a certain type of meeting or everything, but just the attractiveness, I'm sure, for people who are listening, and you are describing that culture of, that's just the foundation. People should
Right.
feel psychologically safe. It's like our nervous systems are like that part, the
Yes.
fight or flight part, we're down regulating that because we need the creative part. You cannot be creative.
Right.
You cannot be in your zone of genius, in that your working genius that you love.
Right.
You can't be activating that if
Yeah.
you are in a kind of tense, fight or flight sort of environment. So when you kind of take a stand for that and you represent, this is what we're going to be about, not just about the type of clients that we're going to look after, but how we're going to look after our people and each other. I mean, how unique is that, Lynn, what you are doing?
Sadly, it's very unique to the point where sometimes people look at me and go, that's weird, right? But it shouldn't be that unique. And I think even hearing you say that in the way that you did, it makes me think even, I think psychological safety is also an inside job, right? Like, I think as a 57-year-old, And, doing the work that I have done on my own mental health, which I'm very grateful for, like even getting to a point in my life where I can, kind of help take some of that internal stress and anxiety and put it in the back seat too. I think I wish I had learned those skills as a 27-year-old or a 37-year-old. It would have made those years of my life a lot better. But I would just encourage anyone who's dealing with a lot of stress or anxiety to do some of that inside work as well, to realize, hey, everything that I think is this complete emergency, it really is not. Or me as a business owner trying to control every little thing, it's not kind of, it's an illusion, right? I'm wasting all of this time trying to control these beautiful, talented humans that I hired. It's like, I don't need to control them. I just need to put them in the right environment to do their very best. And I think that's where, at this point in my career, that's what I'm most excited about right now.
And that's you're describing incredible leadership. I'm sure you know that when you're saying, I'm just going to compliment you a lot
Well,
because
thank you.
I would love, and I'm sure people listening would love, if there were more leaders in organizations, nonprofits, businesses who were espousing the values that you are. And because you are a culture creator when you are a founder and when you
Yeah.
are a leader, and not not everybody engages with that role as consciously
Yeah.
as you do. I'd be curious about, like, when you think about the benefits for you as an organization of being so conscious about the culture that you create, what are those benefits that you see that maybe might be even more tangible than just having
Yeah.
a feeling?
I think from a very, very tangible standpoint, I mean, retention is probably one of the greatest, right? I mean, losing people, hiring people, onboarding people, training people, all of those things take tremendous energy and resources. And so, a very tangible benefit is just employee retention. But I think another tangible benefit is our clients really see that our people are happy and they enjoy working with them. And it's not you know, I sometimes worry about talking about like being nice, because it's not about being nice, because there's toxic positivity, right? And there's fake nice, and
Oh,
what we do, right? It's not about that at all. It's about, being present and having genuine care for the people you work with, whether they're your coworkers or your clients. And I think what's crazy to me about this on reflection is I feel like where I've come today is so different from what I thought a leader was when I started in this business a long time ago, right? And especially, as a woman going down a career path early on, I just felt like, man, I have to be tough, and I have to work hard, and I have to be smart, and I have to be in control of my emotions. And, right? Like, I just early on, like I just felt like, and I think honestly, I think that is what I needed to do early on, because that was the world that I was coming into. And I feel like my approach today versus my approach early in my career is completely different. And it feels 100 times better. And it's not just because I'm the owner of the business, because sometimes being the owner of the business can be a very lonely and stressful place. But it's
mm.
because I feel like I have great integrity and alignment. You use the word alignment with what we're doing here. Yeah. I was just recently invited to a conference called the Hustle Conference. And a person I've worked with in the past who I respect was putting this conference on, and several people who I know and respect spoke at the conference, but I couldn't go because I'm like, that whole idea of the hustle culture is so distasteful to me right now. And it's not that, like, believe me, I work so hard and some days so fast, and people on my team, we work hard and fast, but I don't want it to be what people think of as the hustle culture. That to me right now just doesn't feel right.
Mm, I get you. Totally feel the same. And I used to love that word.
I
You know,
know, me
I
too.
I used to
Me
worship
too.
at the
Uh,
altar of hustle and
yes.
high achievement
Yes.
and making all the sales and getting all the results, being number
Uh,
one. And that was the game. And
yes.
it was a
Being the best. That was the game. And how do I mean, I competed with people on so many different, like, I'm going to show up to this meeting and I'm going to say more smart things than you in this meeting, right? Like, how ridiculous is that, right?
I'm going to
Yeah.
say the last thing.
I'm going to say the last thing. I'm going to say the smartest thing. I'm going to make you feel bad. The boss is really going to, or the client is really going to respect me. Yeah.
But that's how the,
Ridiculous.
the game was kind of set up like that to be in that environment and it's exhausting.
It's
And I
exhausting.
think what is at the core of what you said is you can be highly ambitious, highly productive, very hardworking, and not give in to a hustle culture, which is that's all that
Yes.
matters. That's all
Right.
that matters.
Right. Like, I think when I go to these panels, like I was at last week, where I just felt like a little out of place. Like, sometimes people look at me and I'm talking about psychological safety and not being like in control or hustle culture and working remotely. And they're like, what are you doing? But it's like, you know what? I'm being happy and I'm doing really good work for really great clients. And I'm making the world a better place. And I don't mean to say that in a bragging way, but it's important to me. I think as a business owner, one of the things I can do is, at the end of the day, let my employees go home feeling happy and healthy, right? And, I always kind of giggle when I hear about these businesses that have, like, if they're in the mountains, they have powder day, like their culture is built on powder days or shuffleboard tables or, beer on tap in the office. And I think none of those things are culture. That's not what it's about. Those are, distractions or gimmicks, I think.
Ooh, we could get into the whole of that, but I don't
I
think we have time.
know. Maybe we'll have to get back together.
I think we may have to have part two. I
There
think
you go.
I just love the way that you're so thoughtful and conscious about what you want to create, and that you might be on these panels and kind of feel like you're kind of the odd one out, and you're there and
Yeah.
you're saying your thing, even
Yeah.
though they're looking at you somewhat quizzically. Because
Somewhat quizzically, yes.
and the psychological safety, they'll all be talking about that in
There
10
you
years'
go.
time. It's just like, no, this is a thing that will, if you really want to have people who are highly productive, highly engaged,
Yeah.
this is base
Yeah.
level stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing I love about the new world of podcasts, I love that you and I, who've been aware of each other and maybe spoken on LinkedIn or email, I love the vehicle of the podcast for two like-minded people that live very far apart, being able to spend time and share ideas and build connection in this way.
that's the other word, that kind of connection word that I was going to
Yeah.
kind of bring us to a close on. That's just so, so important as well. And the energy that you can create between two people when you are
Mm.
talking and exploring these topics. And I hope for the listeners that you have kind of, as you've been listening, listeners, that you've found many little nuggets about really leaning into your purpose and what it could
Mm.
look like for you when you kind of say, why not me? Well,
Yeah.
this doing it everybody else's way, I've gotten all I need to get from that environment, which is what you did.
Yeah.
You kind of made a change and thought, well, maybe that's it. And then you were like, no, I'm actually going to have to do something bigger than this. And
Yeah.
it's scary and things are going to change. And then you've built this incredible organization that is just going from strength to strength.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best with it and the podcast. Tell people a little bit about where they can find you, where they can find the podcast, because I know
Absolutely.
that there's just such thirst for purpose-driven
Yeah.
organizations.
I'd love people to give the podcast a listen. It's called Agency for Change, and you can find it on all the major podcast outlets. We're on YouTube. You can also find it on the KidGlove website, which is KidGlove without an E.com, KidGlove.com. I also love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to connect personally and talk further, I'm pretty easy to find. Lyn Weinman from KidGlove on LinkedIn. So give me a shout and I'd love to talk.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lynn, for your time today. It's been amazing talking to you. And hope to have a part 2 sometime soon, because I know that we would be on here for an hour.
Yeah, thank you. I can't wait for that. Thank you very much for inviting me. This has been so much fun.
Thanks, Lynn. Thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with me today. If you enjoy the episode and it resonated with you, please consider subscribing and share this podcast with someone you know who would benefit from the message. If you'd like to take things a step further, you'll find some free and paid resources in the show notes. And until next time, in the unlikely event that no one has told you this yet today, let me have the profound honor of reminding you that you are truly magnificent and the world is a far better and brighter place because you are here with us all. See you next time.